welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. I am your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to talk about AEW Dynamite from July the 17th, 2024. A show which featured a 1-hour match. So it's not a lot to discuss, except the 1-hour match, which I am going to go into because I took notes. So we will be going into that. But first, we got news and notes. The only real note to discuss here, well, there's two, I guess you could say. But the first one is that Warner Brothers Discovery is once again downsizing. Apparently, they're about to lay off like 1,000 people. Apparently, the company is seeing losses in linear television, which will be cable, as well as they're losing money in streaming. Therefore, they're starting to downsize. So a lot of the cuts coming in the Max division. Of course, they still are in the midst of something going on with the NBA. I'm not sure if the NBA has committed to going somewhere else, namely NBC, or whether they'll be around for a while. Either way, it doesn't seem like Warner Brothers Discovery is in a good place financially. And Bank of America suggests they look into strategic alternatives or strategic options, which usually means sell some stuff, selling the company or whatever. But it says that they seemingly are interested in actually matching Amazon's NBA rights deal, but they're about to spend a whole lot of money, and they're still losing subscribers, both in linear television and in streaming. And this is important because Tony Khan is still doing interviews where he claims they're having healthy conversations. And your boy Brandon Thurston, shout out to this guy on Twitter. I just want to make sure he gets his proper respect. The user's name is equal X lookup ref in parentheses with a number sign. This is a disaster. I'm trying to help you out, bro, but you got to use actual words. His ads is at SUMX_ERROR or some X_error. And he apparently was listening to WrestleNomics, where Brandon Thurston says that they should ban all conversation about the TV rights deal for AEW until a deal is made. That doesn't sound very professional. Doesn't sound like something that somebody who impartially looks at the landscape of pro wrestling would think. I guess only certain stories need to be kept alive forever and ever, even when there's not that much in the way of movement in the story. But anyway, I'm not going to harp on that. Brandon Thurston refuses to tell people that he has a friend that works in AEW, by the way. And I don't know if you guys remember the story about Nyla Rose in the state of Oklahoma, but he ended up getting all those emails because his friend is an executive in AEW and sent him the emails. That's how he was able to do it. So Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics, he does what he does, and some of it's good, but you have to question where his biases are. And the fact that he doesn't want to, or at least on his show anyway, to talk about the AEW television deal until there's a decision made is like, you have to look at the overall thing. And looking at overall, Warner Brothers Discovery has much bigger issues than what's going on with AEW. The deal with AEW apparently is not even up until December. And I think the negotiations has already moved away from exclusivity. So I think that there probably are other bidders for AEW. And they probably would prefer to stay with Warner Brothers Discovery because these are large networks. And Warner Brothers Discovery does have a lot of money, despite the fact that they're drastically dealing with cord cutting and the glut of streaming services out there. But it's a conversation that needs to be had because these guys are talking about hey, in a couple of weeks, there will be more Dynamites in existence than Nitros, which might be a real thing, even if it finishes out the year, because Nitro went on from 95 to 2001, and it's been that's about 5 or 6 years. And in Dynamite, so there'll be almost 5 or 6 years of Dynamite. So it's worth discussing. It could be a major deal if AEW has to leave Warner Brothers Discovery and go to probably a smaller network. I can't imagine they would find a bigger one. So that would drastically cut into their viewership. Even if they get a higher rights fee, it would take eyeballs off the product because it won't be as visible on cable. Even if they move to like FS1 or something like that, that's in fewer households than TBS and TNT. You catch my drift? You got to be able to look at these things holistically. Like WWE, they took Raw off of USA Network, where millions of people have their network, and they put it to Netflix. Now, yes, millions of people have Netflix, but some people don't want to pay for Netflix. So it's going to be harder to tell how many people are actually watching Monday Night Raw on Netflix. But that's a bridge we cross when we get there. Right now, we're talking about AEW. So it's an interesting piece of business. Another thing that I wanted to discuss, because why not? Kerry Silken, former owner of Ring of Honor, is pretty upset at what's going on with Ring of Honor currently. He says, quote, he was talking to, he was on a podcast called Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden. He says, Ring of Honor, that era, tried to show some respect to professional wrestling. Sure, we had some wacky stuff. Sure, we had some flippy-dippy-doo, which was coming into fashion. Ring of Honor, it was some good pro wrestling going on in that segment of it. Right now, it's like no one cares at all. I don't care how much money Tony Khan has. It's not being treated very well. This was followed up by a Fightful report, apparently, saying that Tony Khan has heard this and will be putting more attention into Ring of Honor. I don't know how true that is, but this, of course, led to a lot of debate amongst the AEW fans about, what would Ring of Honor be right now if Tony Khan hadn't bought it. And I get what they're saying. Again, if Vince would have bought it, it'd have been in a slot on the network next to WCW and ECW. And for them, that's a bad thing right now. There's people that are working there, but it's a money pit, Ring of Honor is not in position to make any money. Ring of Honor is not in a position to be talked about with any real significance. Not only because it's not on television, but because it literally doesn't matter to the mainstream product of AEW. I mean, it's already a concern, The world champion of Ring of Honor is a mid-card guy on AEW TV. And I can't tell you when the last time he won something significant on that show. The women's champion hasn't been on the show in over a year. They don't really talk about anything. They'll trade the title on television. So they'll have Kyle Fletcher show up with the belt or something like that on TV, and maybe a TV title or something to that effect. But when they were doing the Ring of Honor mixing, they weren't doing it in a way that really benefited Ring of Honor. They were doing it in a way where it was guys going on side quests, like when MJF was a tag team champion in Ring of Honor. He never appeared on Ring of Honor, he just had their belt, but he still worked Dynamite and Collision like Ring of Honor, the actual show, didn't exist. At least FTR wrestled on the pay-per-views, but MJF didn't. And that shows people that you don't really care about the product. When Becky Lynch was the NXT champion, she wrestled on NXT. She defended the title on NXT. She made appearances on NXT. That was the difference. When you see what they're doing with Ring of Honor, it's nowhere near what NXT is to WWE. And this is what many AEW fans want. They want Ring of Honor to be their NXT. This is what they want. But they have not forced Tony's hand. Because they're just excited to have anything. They're just glad it's still alive, which I don't understand why you care about it still being alive if nobody watches it. It's a money pit. It's wasting everybody's time. Like, they recently just signed a bunch of guys, like Rachel Ellering, who's been in the business for 10 years, and she's trapped in Ring of Honor. What was this? Mason Mansoor. Like, are these the people that's going to pull your company out of the doldrums? No, because if anybody had any time, like, let's say Ricochet, because we know Ricochet's coming, right? Are you going to put Ricochet in Ring of Honor to show that, Ring of Honor is back and try to get them to draw? No, because for starters, Dynamite is crumbling. So you got to start whatever Band-Aids you get, whatever stitches or gauze you manage to pick up, you're going to try to use it to bolster up Dynamite. So this whole thing is a house of cards, is a Jenga board, and Dynamite is the foundation. It's the A show. If the A show was crumbling, everything else is not looking so strong. When you look at the ratings for Rampage, and who even talks about Rampage, most people act like Rampage don't even exist anymore. So while, people are frustrated, Kerry Soken is frustrated about the treatment of Ring of Honor, and as I guess you could say, grandfather of Ring of Honor, he has a right to his opinion, but ultimately he doesn't own the company anymore. Tony Khan can do whatever he wants with it, and he's having a hard enough time keeping AEW afloat. So Ring of Honor is just going to be, one of the many gems in his toy chest, and he'll get to it when he gets to it. If all else fails, he'll just, wouldn't it have been smart for you to put all the AEW stuff on Honor Club too, since it's already existing? Why not do that? To bolster Honor Club. Get people to watch Honor Club by putting all the AEW stuff on there. The only reason you wouldn't do that is if you can't. If you own both companies, why wouldn't you just combine them and have, much like WWE does, where you have NXT and you got WWE on the same product? I never understood that, but then again, nobody ever asked Tony about that either. Why do you have Honor Club and AEW events don't show up on there? Like, you can't watch old Rampages on there. You can't watch old Collisions on there. You can't watch old pay-per-views on there. I would think, since the apparatus already exists, and you're not shy about the two companies cross-promoting and cross-branding, that you would just use Honor Club to bolster it, if for nothing else but to keep your very loyal audience subscribed to Honor Club. You would move all of that stuff to Honor Club. Why wouldn't you do that? There has to be a reason that hasn't been explained to me why he's funding both companies and keeping them separate like that. I understand you might be trying to protect the AEW brand, but I don't know. I just don't think it's working right now. I think you need to, gamble a little bit. Bet on yourself. Ain't that what the Young Bucks say? Isn't that the whole credo of the AEW sickos? Bet on yourself a little bit. The rest of the news and notes will be discussed throughout the episode. We'll get there when we get there. All right, match 1. 59 minutes, 57 seconds. MJF defeats Will Ospreay to win the international title. It was an epic match. Absolutely fantastic match that made no sense whatsoever. Just made no sense. But it was fantastic because it's long. Because that's how great movies work. That's how great matches work. When you heard about Ric Flair and Barry Windham, all you needed to know is that the match was an hour. What they did in that hour, nobody remembers. It was an hour. That's what matters. When you flip through the magazines and you see the time, that's what matters. They put in that work. When you actually sit back and look at some of the stuff that they did, it made no sense. This is a nonsense match. But I want to discuss this match through a specific lens. There's this concept. It's called the rule of cool. You probably Google it if you want. What it means is, if something is cool, but it's out of the ordinary, and it breaks the rules or the set standards for a specific universe, as long as it's cool, people are willing to turn the other cheek on it. A perfect example of this is and one basketball, or otherwise known as street ball. That was when the guys used to do the crazy handles, and it involved all kinds of traveling, ball palming, all kind of illegal stuff. Stuff you couldn't do in the NBA. And I remember so much pressure on the NBA to just let the street ball players play street ball in the NBA. And the NBA fought against it. They would call traveling on these dudes every single time because the NBA had rules. They set a standard, and they were not going to let these street ball guys, no matter how popular they were, no matter how many tapes and one was selling on the streets, no matter how popular they were not going to let them influence the NBA. So the rule of cool didn't really work in the NBA. In fact, the NBA fought against it, and technically they won. And one today is a relic of what basketball used to be. It used to be a whole thing where you used to see rappers like Jadakiss doing Reebok commercials with Allen Iverson doing all kind of crossovers and everything. It was so cool in like 2001. Not too many people remember that stuff today. You don't really see a lot of that stuff anymore. You don't even really see it in pickup games anymore. All that crazy ball handling stuff is pretty much gone. It's pretty much been purged. But the rule of cool is why it existed in the first place. Why so many people were enamored with it, even though all the moves were illegal, technically. You could not do them in the NBA, and you couldn't do them in college either. You couldn't even do them in a high school basketball game. But it was fun for that time in that structure where we're just making stuff up, So we can go out there and and travel, double dribble and all that kind of stuff, stop and start, a bunch of illegal stuff, right? This is what this match is. This is what indie wrestling is. The rule of cool exists in indie wrestling. Indie wrestling is where you can sell the knee and then forget about it for 15 minutes and then go back to it. You can sell your knee the whole match and then do a front flip, land right on your legs, and then don't sell the knee because it's cool. You did a front flip. That's awesome. The rule of cool is how you supposedly had a shoulder injury, even though it stops the match because, oh my God, my shoulder hurts so bad. Yet I'm going to throw my whole arm using that same shoulder into the back of this guy's head again and again and again. The rule of cool means that there's no countouts. We could just go out into the crowd and just be out there 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's the referee's discretion. Rule of cool. Nothing matters. But the problem with this is that once you set the standard that nothing matters, then people are just kind of losing interest. Part of the reason why rules exist is they want to see how people are going to play within those rules. If everybody gets to break the rules, if there are no rules, then there's no tension in the match. They tried to create tension via the time limit by saying we give it a 60-minute time limit. That's the only rule we're going to stick to. They didn't even get there to the time limit. They were 3 seconds short. But it was the only rule that they held on to. They were outside the ring. They used weapons. And it just seemingly went on forever. And I was just sitting here like, this is typical AEW hour-long match. They don't know how to work, really. They just know how to string together huge spots that, even in this instance, didn't really even get a lot of people going. Some of the spots did. Most of the spots didn't. But I don't think this match in any way measures up to some of the other 60-minute matches they've done in AEW, specifically Omega and Danielson. And I wasn't even that hot on that match. The tag team contest was between FTR and Jay White, and I think it was Jay White and Juice Robinson. I don't even think this match was on that level, you know? And I wasn't that hot about that match either. You know, newsflash, I don't really like long matches. I just don't think you should invest an hour into a wrestling match. To me, that's a bit much. 30 to 40 minutes is, you know, including entrances, is probably enough. But let's start from the beginning. They started out doing Power Rangers fight scene stuff, which is all of the Ospreay is throwing punches and MJF is hota, blocking the punches, and you're just like, oh, okay. Ospreay's doing flips and they're doing headlock takeovers. I was like, that was interesting at least. And it's just going to do the dueling spot where how many kicks can you miss and leg sweeps can you miss and how many dodges can you do. And this is how Will Ospreay starts pretty much every match. So it is what it is. The only real fun spot for me was the little girl pummeling MJF in the crowd. They had been in the crowd for like 2 or 3 minutes at this point, crowd brawling, you know. And a little girl, she's about 7. Apparently her dad was on Twitter and told everybody who she didn't tell her who she was, like her name or anything, but said that was his daughter who had decided to knuckle up MJF in the rib cage. And I got to tell you, those look like they hurt more than whatever Will Ospreay was doing. She tagged him a good 5 or 6 times. It was very cute. He flipped her off. That was even funnier. So that was cool. That was a very organic moment that I thought meant something. I will really be disappointed if I find out later that that's MJF's cousin or something like that. That would be disappointing. But as for now, it was a very fun spot that seemed to be very spontaneous and interesting. The little girl couldn't hurt him, so I'm okay with it not being like a disqualification or anything like that. So Will Ospreay, guy has no sense of psychology. I don't know how many times he stopped it because he had an injured leg or he had an injured shoulder, and he just kept going, kept flipping all over the place. It's so ridiculous. We got a Styles clash on the ring apron, a Styles clash off the second rope. I'm sure AJ Styles is just looking like, man, why are you using my shit to do this? Like, he probably texting Petey Williams like, man, they done got me. They got me now, brother. They went and blew your shit up, and now they blowing mine up. What next? They gonna be doing whatever Kid Cash finisher is on tables and stuff. And they probably, you know, throwing prayers up to Macho Man. Like, no, they need to start elbow dropping guys through tables for no good reason. MJF, didn't he injure his hip jumping off the top rope onto the floor? Well, he did it again in this match. Jumped off the top rope through a table. And for an elbow drop, nowhere near the finish. Nowhere near the finish of this match, actually. Pretty ridiculous, right? MJF got hit with Will Ospreay's finish, the hidden blade. He kicked out of it because that doesn't matter either. You know, drop a guy on his head from the second rope, he kicks out. You run your elbow across his head, he kicks out. Then we get the melodrama. Will Ospreay's like, oh, I've done everything. There's only one thing left. And he tries, only one thing left, bro. And he decides he's going to try to do the Tiger Driver 91, but his conscience kicked in, and he couldn't do it. He just couldn't do that to another human being. MJF is a man. He's got a cat or dog, or he's got parents at least. Somebody loves him. I just can't drop him on his head with the Tiger Driver 91. I mean, I totally can drop him on his head on the ring apron. I 100% can drop him on his head off the second rope, but my God, I just can't give him a Tiger Driver 90. Come on, man. Are you serious? Am I supposed to be like a fucking idiot? Is that apparently what this means? Is I have to be stupid? You didn't drop this dude on his head 3 or 4 times already, man. But this one time, I just can't do it. He already had, and you can't even pull the bullshit. Like, he can't defend himself from the Tiger Driver. He can defend himself from the Styles Clash when his arms is trapped behind Will Ospreay's legs. Bro, This is bullshit. All right, this is full bullshittery. MJF, just an hour into the match, he realizes he had the Dynamite Diamond Ring. He hits Will Ospreay with it and pins him. And the match is over. So MJF wins, which is a sensible decision. They could have done this in half the time. I mean, literally, you could have done this in 25 minutes. Well, and not 60, right? Now, the point of this, of course, is that Daniel Garcia is going to return. And it's going to be Daniel Garcia versus MJF. Okay, fine. I like that. At least it's set up beforehand. And it's not... I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Daniel Garcia. But Daniel Garcia has been pursuing this title. And now he's got heat with MJF because MJF tried to kill him. So they're setting up Daniel Garcia to be the conquering hero who's going to avenge Will Ospreay. Going to, get his revenge on MJF. He has to win that match, though. This is not one of those things where Daniel Garcia gets over by putting up a good effort. He literally has to beat MJF. Preferably not in 2 hours, all right? You can beat him in 15 minutes, without, this whole thing needing to last the length of Alexander, all right? I know everybody wants to make their in-ring version of Once Upon a Time in America, but the rest of us have lives, all right? I get it. You guys have decided that you want to try to bring all your melodrama in there. Just stop. You could have watched 6 really cool matches in the length of this one, all right? Respect people's time, brother. Moving on. The Acclaimed want to be in Blood and Guts. Both Swerve and Mark Briscoe agrees. Jack Perry said he doesn't give a shit about Brandon Cutler and even beat him up himself because he's a badass. He's a badass. Don't you know that? He's a badass. The Young Bucks were there. They talked about Hangman Page returning to the Elite. And then they had a conversation with Mercedes where they were giving a thank you for banning Britt Baker from Dynamite 250. And then Okada wanted to see Mercedes dance. And she danced for him while they chanted CEO, very softly, by the way. And then he got hot and bothered. He was steamed rice, boy. Ooh, he went from sushi to steamed rice that quick. Look at you. Want a little milk in that coffee, huh? Yeah, a little milk in that sake, huh? Asshole. This leads to the main event. Swerve Strickland, Okada. Match was like 6 or 7 minutes. Ended in disqualification because the Young Bucks came in. We got a giant brawl featuring all the members of the Blood and Guts team. Darby Allin came from the roof, which seems to be the only thing that really jazzed up this entire show, was Darby Allin coming in from the roof. And it's just generic brawl to end the show. Okie dokie. I don't care about this. I don't care about anybody involved. I don't care about the Blood and Guts match. To me, it's slapdash. It doesn't seem to have any legitimacy behind it. It's just 4 guys, 5 guys, or whatever, that want to have a match against each other, and we got to have a Blood and Guts match because we need to pop a number. Because we tried to pop a number here, we got to pop a number. It's Hot Shot booking. The Hot Shot booking is back, y'all. You could tell Tony Khan is under pressure. That Hot Shot booking has returned. Booking MJF versus Will Ospreay on TV, and then a double cage match. It's a 2-ring cage match. I'm sorry. Next week, he's nervous. Look at him, he's shaking. Mercedes, she wrestled Nyla Rose. I don't care about. I didn't even watch it. I seen enough wrestling for the past hour. I didn't even watch that. Anyway, after the match, she walked over to a fan, tore up that fan's sign. It was a fan sitting there in a mask. Of course, it was Britt Baker. Hi. Britt Baker snatches off the mask, chases away Mercedes, and Mercedes ran because she's a coward. Mercedes Moné. I do not think they're getting the most out of her. To be quite honest, they're paying her a lot of money. She doesn't seem to be moving a lot of tickets. She doesn't seem to be moving a lot of merchandise. And she's not getting good reactions. She's getting middling reactions. You would think somebody on her level. And look, I know a lot of people, I maintain that Mercedes is a superstar. She used to get huge reactions in WWE. She was seen as a star. She began to believe she was a star. She believed her own hype. She went to AEW, and this is the reaction that she's getting. These are the kinds of middling, meh reactions that she's getting. She's in the middle of a feud with the biggest female wrestler, star, that AEW has ever produced. And they're getting terrible fan reactions. I know they're in Little Rock, Arkansas, but my God, these are the kinds of places that really show if you're over or not. These are the kinds of places that if you can rock this place, then you know that you're over. These are the kinds of places AEW used to be over in. But those days seem to be long gone. I wonder if Tony Khan, every time he has to write that, whatever that figure is to pay her every week, does he feel a twinge of pain? Does his stomach knot up a little bit every time he has to sign that check and realize that he's just an ATM and that she is in no way contributing to this product? She's just a huge expense. Maybe he doesn't see it, or maybe he doesn't want to see it. Maybe he's trapped up in the magic like he was with CM Punk, like he will be with Ricochet. She's a great, great star, and that's just his perspective. He'll pay whatever because she's a star, without realizing it's how you use people, not who they are. Moving on. Mariah May. She had a video package where she says Toni Storm has been a mother to her, and she did this to make Toni proud, and this one is for her. She then came out dressed as Toni Storm with Toni Storm's theme song and everything. The crowd at first was excited to see Toni. Once they realized it was Mariah May, they died. As Mariah May was about to talk, Tony Schiavone said, "Well, just speak, bitch." I was like, whoa, Tony. Kind of spicy there, brother. It took so many people off guard because he was so agitated, but it was funny to me. I'm not one of these cupcakes that were probably offended by it. Then Mariah May goes on about this Toni Storm thing. And basically the reason she did it was, well, she says everybody should have saw it coming, everybody except Toni. And Toni didn't see it coming because she was so desperate for the spotlight, she didn't realize she was giving it away. And she said the real question not is why did I do it, but what took so long. And she said she was just having so much fun stringing Toni along until she saw Wembley, and she realized instead of taking the old horse behind a barn and shooting it, why not execute it in front of as many people as possible. Said she loves Toni Storm still and realized that she can be so much more, and that she never loved Toni more than when she was screaming and bleeding and crying, and that AEW is now all about Mariah. It was an effective promo that was ruined by what chance, because we must have our what chance. Stone Cold Steve Austin has irreparably damaged pro wrestling with the what chant. He has done an immeasurable amount of damage to promos from what chants. I really wish that they start ejecting people. I'm at that point at this, it's been like 20 years of this. I'm at the point now where if people start chanting what, it's time to just throw them out. I think that's the only way to stop it at this point, is that if you got to go in there and as soon as people start chanting what, got to throw them out. Got to throw them out, man. These what chants need to be killed with fire, and some people need to sacrifice so that we all may live, But overall, the promo was okay. It wasn't really a explanation of why she did what she did. It was just kind of like everybody knew this was coming except Toni, because she was so full of herself. But I get it. I get the story. It's based on a movie that most people have not seen, but it's a good storyline. You know, people were into it last week because it was so shocking. But then they followed it up with this, and this was solid, but it was in front of a uninterested crowd, and it killed it. The crowd killed this promo, and this thing, Mariah May's heat from last week didn't transfer. I think it was more the shock of the moment from last week. And now the shock has worn off. You just made people sit through an hour-long match. And then you made people sit through Nyla Rose. They've also had to sit through Chris Jericho. And there's no reason to be up for this. There's no reason for people to be excited for this. There's no reason for people to be invested in this after what they've already seen and not really given much reaction to. But Mariah May should keep trying. You know, this is a good storyline that they've got going here. It's working. You might just have to change the audience. Like I said, you might just have to throw the audience out. RJ City is the architect of this storyline. Tony Khan wanted to give him some credit. So basically, RJ City is the only person that's ever seen the movie that this thing is based on, All About Eve. And he's the one who saw it. And he's said, okay, pretty much he worked with Tony Khan to craft this storyline with Mariah May. And they wanted to make sure everybody knew that. So they went about talking about it on podcasts and stuff. Man, I hate podcasts, right? Like, back in the day, man, it would have took you 20 years to get out of somebody who came up with this storyline. Now we know that Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns are sitting in the room, chefing up the entire bloodline story with occasional sprinkles from The Rock or whatever. And we know that RJ City and Tony Khan is sitting there mapping out. It's like, I wish I don't need to know all of this, you know? I don't need to know all of this. This ain't all something that I need to be discussed. Like, not while the storyline is still going on. Maybe when the storyline is over, you know, you can discuss where the ideas came from, yada, yada, yada. But this storyline was actually kind of spoiled before it really even started. You know, this is why the promo where Mariah May says everybody knew this was happening, that's kind of where it was a good direction for it to go in. Because it's not like she's trying to insult your intelligence by saying that this was legitimate in any way. It was like, no, this was bullshit, and everybody should have known it. And you should have known it if you were in the AEW Smart fan, because they was talking about it when she debuted and was put with Tony, that she was going to turn on Tony. Which is why I thought they might hook him and switch it, and then Tony turns on her, but they decided to go with what they went with. Overall, though, if RJ City came up with this, it was good. It was really smart. You should let him help you more, Tony. Because I'm pretty sure his ideas are better than yours. Your ideas suck. And your talent evaluation skills are also very bad. Very, very bad. But Mariah May is going to have to keep trying because they're not making it easy for her. TV time with Chris Jericho. Nothing really happens. Minoru Suzuki came out there and challenged him to a match next week. There was some shoving. I don't know why the Learning Tree just watched Chris Jericho get bullied. They just stood there and watched. Hi, guys. I got shoved on my ass by an 80-year-old Japanese dude and nobody did anything. Hi, guys. I threw a fireball at the face of Hook. Ain't seen him since. Hi, guys. I ran Samoa Joe's head through a wall made out of paper towel. This is ridiculous. What a stupid, stupid angle. Why does Tony Khan think that Minoru Suzuki matters? Please find other Japanese wrestlers. I don't know why I keep saying it. I said this during the Forbidden Door thing. If you're new to this channel, you've probably never heard me say this before. But a lot of these old guys that Tony Khan is, obsessed with, Minoru Suzuki. I know Suzuki was a big deal in the 90s, in the early 2000s. And he has a reputation. But if you're really a Japanese wrestling fan, you probably should move on from your markdom. And this is where we get the idea that this guy's just a fucking mark, right? The story of Ultimo Guerrero. who had lost his mask years ago. Tony Khan books him because he's a mark for him. The guy shows up with no mask. Tony Khan forces the guy to wear a mask. They had to make the mask, and then the mask falls off, and he's struggling with it the entire match. He has to wrestle Okada because Tony Khan wants Ultimo Guerrero, who had already lost his mask, to wrestle with a mask on because that's the Ultimo Guerrero he knew as a kid. Mark shit. This is just like when, Joel Goodhart was booking Abdullah the Butcher. Or when Hannibal TV was booking Abdullah the Butcher. I just want to get a fork in the head, man. Just fork me in the head. That'd be so cool. If you're really a Japanese wrestling fan, help grow it. Why are you still bringing in Minoru Suzuki and Tanahashi and Naito? These guys are beat up and broke down and old as shit. I'm begging you. Actually watch the product. This is the crazy thing because the AEW fans, they swear up and down that Tony Khan is just like them. But Tony Khan is a stuck in the 90s, stuck in the early 2000s, mark dumbass. This is why, he salivated over CM Punk. And, he's, even though CM Punk was all beat up and old and shit, right? He's salivating over the Briscoes, and the Briscoes weren't bad. But he now has to have all of these old guys hanging around. It's like, man, at some point, you got to take your Mark glasses off and you got to say, what are we doing here? Minoru Suzuki, put him in a storyline with somebody else where he's got a protege or something. Help yourself, if nothing else. Don't you got Japanese guys on the roster? Like, you got Takeshita on the roster, right? Then put Suzuki with Takeshita and say, Takeshita is going to be Suzuki's underling, his young boy, whatever. And you do that or something in order to make the guy who's young on your roster more important. Rather than, Minoru Suzuki's an old badass. He's going to correct Chris Jericho's negative behaviors. Nobody wants to see that bullshit. I wouldn't want to see that bullshit if they was both 30 years younger. I have zero interest in Minoru Suzuki. This is the United States of America. Minoru Suzuki ain't done shit here. He ain't Antonio Inoki. And he ain't a fucking superstar. Who cares about Minoru Suzuki? Really? Nobody gives a fuck. Outside of like Bloodsport or whatever. Dumbass shit, man. It's a waste of money. At least it's his own money he's wasting. It ain't mine. Alright, so I was flummoxed by the next one. Because the Bang Bang Gang, they're being stripped of the trios titles due to Jay White's injury. Which I was like, okie dokie. And then I find out that they're still going to wrestle for the trios titles, however. Because they're going to wrestle Christian and his squad, which is Nick Wayne and Luchasaurus. And they're still wrestling for the 6-man titles. And I just scratched my head and I said, what would be the point of stripping them of the 6-man belts only to put them in a 6-man title match? What's the benefit to that? Why would you do that? Why not do the smart thing and just say that Juice Robinson is going to sub in for Jay White? I mean, that's kind of... See, here's the problem. Because AEW has done both of these things. They have made interim champions for injuries. They haven't done that. They didn't do that in this case, which would have been smart. They could have said that the Bang Bang Gang with Juice Robinson is going to be the interim champions until Jay White returns. Or he could have... What he did do is strip them, which made no sense. Because Juice Robinson is a member of the team. He's on the group. I mean, just all you got to do is pull the old Freebird rule, right? And then the other one is you could have just, what they usually do is they just replace the guy, which is what I'm saying here about the Freebird rule. There's no consistent rules with these championships. Some guys get hurt and they have to defend them in a handicap match like MJF did. Other guys get hurt and somebody else subs in. Somebody else gets hurt, so there's an interim champion. Like, there's no consistency here. And I guess it's just pro wrestling in that respect where, sometimes guys get hurt and they get stripped. Other times guys get hurt and they don't get stripped. They just have to, work a lighter schedule, which I guess is fine, I suppose. Whatever. All right, so that's Dynamite. I didn't care about this show at all. Not one bit. Not one bit. Mariah May tried her best, but she just couldn't get anybody interested in this story. And that's sad. MJF, that match was entirely too long with Will Ospreay. I guess they had to book Will Ospreay strong to lose. Because, but when you book people like that they can survive a cannon explosion, you're burying the rest of your roster. You kind of buried MJF by Will Ospreay is a guy. It takes him an hour to beat this guy. It's kind of ridiculous if you ask me. But whatever. Mercedes wrestling Nia Rose should not have occurred. It's a waste of bumps. Nobody was entertained by that, I can promise you. Jericho, Suzuki, boy, I could go on forever about how useless Minoru Suzuki is. I never disliked that guy so much as I do right now. I just got a fire in my belly about Minoru Suzuki right now. It's just, I'm so sick of him showing up. And it's not even him, it's Tony Khan, man. Like, the guy, it's ridiculous. Let's just move on. Oh, yeah. Let's close on this. Crowbar from WCW. He claims to have created the timeless character, the black and white videos, all that kind of stuff. He claims he created the character in 2021. Now, interestingly enough, he did work in AEW, where he claimed he told them about the character when he worked AEW Dark. And I forget what year that was. I think that was 2021 when he came up with that gimmick. Yeah, it was in 2021. So apparently he told AEW about it, and he used it on Dark, and that's where they got it from. So even though RJ City is given a lot of credit for coming up with the character, and Tony Storm has said that RJ City gave her the idea for a timeless Tony Storm, and of course we know that he's the one who structured the storyline with Mariah May. He even had a bit of a throwback gimmick himself, using kind of old-timey lingo and things of that nature. So it's we don't know who is the true progenitor of the timeless gimmick. Maybe Crowbar came up with the name and the look to a degree, but I know RJ City had a significant hand in it. And a lot of it's based off of stuff that he was also doing on the independents, because, no idea is really original. But it doesn't matter. Ultimately, everybody's trying to take credit for this thing now because it's a success. If it was a big old flop, everybody would be trying to hide their hand, like, I ain't got nothing to do with this. But because it was successful, and I think mostly it was successful due to Tony Storm, who had the look, and she actually gave it a voice. She played into it, and she has that old-timey beauty that really worked for the gimmick. So all of these dudes can claim that they came up with the idea or they wrote the story or whatever. It wouldn't have worked if it wasn't Tony. And that's about it. So I really don't have anything else to say about this show. It was profoundly stupid. Just a profoundly stupid show to spend. I mean, $250, you didn't really, celebrate past Dynamites or try to make it feel like a huge event. You just booked big matches on it and then just said, well, the matches will carry the show. And then they didn't. So it was moist. Talk to you guys later. Bye.